Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Flint. My name is Chris Monk, and I'm your worship associate today. Welcome to those in the sanctuary and to those who are watching online. We are an inclusive, progressive, and LGBTQ affirming church, and we are happy to have you with us today. If you would like information about Unitarian Universalism or our congregation, please feel free to contact one of our ministers or our church office. The contact information can be found at uuflint.org. A few announcements. If you want to find your passion in volunteering, or perhaps you are looking for a social justice project, need a one-time, one-and-done opportunity to do good, we have them all at coffee hour at the Helping Hands Fair today. Please stop by and talk to one of our board members downstairs. Because of the fair today, we won't have a discussion after the service, but Jerry and Lynn will both be downstairs with us. You may have noticed that we have a new big flaming chalice symbol on our sanctuary west wall. It's gorgeous. The Sharps Committee that works to keep our congregation aware of Martha and Reverend Waystill Sharp, who defied the Nazis, approved the purchase of this sculpture and the plaque that explains its history. Thank you to everyone who helped make this major addition to our sanctuary possible. Thanks also to Terry Anway, entrepreneur and husband of Karen Anway. Terry put the power coat finish on the wall sculpture and put up with some very serious pickiness on our part. Our final announcement is especially important and a pleasure to do. We want to introduce two new staff members. Some you may never see, but you certainly see their work. We'd like to recognize our faithful and friendly custodian, Katie Straw. Katie, there you are. Welcome back, Katie. You've been missed. I used to babysit for her. And the person behind the sweet voice on your phone and who manages our office is also here with us, Kanisha Harvey. Welcome, Kanisha. It's good to finally see you in person.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Good. Katie and Kanisha were both hired after COVID quieted down, and their hard work and dedication is getting our church back to normal. Thank you both very much. One last announcement is the crop walk is coming up, and the crop walk is for World Hunger. And if you're interested, see Terry Cross or Kathy Stiles after the service. It's not till October 2nd, and you'll be seeing more about this coming up. Terry promises to have more information next week. Yeah, well, I'll remind her. Our second Sunday collection is this Sunday. Our second Sunday collection recipient this month is the Genesee County Free Medical Clinic. They provide quality health care to Genesee County's uninsured employed people without regard to race, creed, and ethnicity in a safe environment and respectful manner. Over 100 on-site volunteer doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and other professionals provide services on site on a rotating basis. Patients receive all on-site services or referrals, including prescription meds, free of charge. These services are funded through grants, fundraising events and private donations like ours. You can give by check and write Second Sunday in the memo line, or online there is a Second Sunday offering option. If you give cash, please place it in an envelope and indicate that it is for Second Sunday. Now we will be lighting our chalice. The flame of our chalice this morning is a symbol of the warmth and brightness of our connections. The flame lights our way back together again from our separate summer lives, and it lights our way forward into this new church year of promise and renewal. Thank you. Please join me in reciting our covenant. Recognizing the richness of diversity, the beauty and wonder of shared worship, and the transforming power of love and service, we gather as a sacred, intentional community to freely seek knowledge and truth, to celebrate the fullness of life, and by our actions to increase goodness and justice.
Good morning. Good morning. Our opening words this morning are from a UU minister in Nebraska, Sherry Woodbury. Here we are in our circle again, a circle of vision and reflection, a forum for deciding and empowering. We are here in a circle of love and trust, brought together by a series of choices and promises, by hope and gratitude, by our own shadows faced and befriended, with a servant's heart, with a leader's listening. Truer than all our inner trembling, let us model the health we seek for all in this community. Somewhere out there, all we dream is possible. And somewhere in here, we are sowing the seeds.
Good morning for me. It's so great to see you all here today. If you are able to, let's rise and we'll sing hymn 360. Here we have gathered.
Our words for meditation this morning are those of UU minister Nathan C. Walker, who is also an award-winning instructor of human rights law at Rutgers University. The question is not, what happens when we die? Nobody really knows. The real question is, what happens when we stop living? The stoicism we face on a daily basis is a symptom of a larger illness called a dually dulled life. Our lives can be hypnotized by the monotonous commutes, multiplied by the flickering fluorescent light that falls upon our micromanaging bosses. Who here is dying a slow and numbing death? But there is no time to be lulled by monotony. There is no time to be blaming other people for our own feelings. There's no time for crying or complaining. No, it's time to wake up, to rise up, and to carry ourselves into a day worth living. Let us live one day, this day, with passion and a sense of collective synergy. Let us live one day, this day, by asking questions that truly challenge us and make us feel alive. For today's question is not, what happens when we die? It is, what happens when we stop living? Such words may have great power, but so does silence. And in our silence today, let us remember those who died on 9/11/2001. During our following musical meditation, you'll be invited to come forward or go to the back of the sanctuary and light a candle of joy or concern. And you can also write your joy of concern in one of the books at the back so we can put it in our weekly e-update. But first, let us enjoy 90 seconds of wonderful silence.
some of you may have heard that we rang the church bell this morning because today is special. It's the official start of a new church year. But from 1987 until COVID shut us down, that bell was rung by one of our children every Sunday to signal the beginning of our services. Now, the tower and the bell are also pretty special because the children in religious education asked for them to be added to the building, and they actually helped raise money for it. How many of you remember all of that? Several of you. Well, initially, what they wanted it for is for our congregation to participate in the Let Freedom Ring Genesee County church bell ringing on MLK Day, because we couldn't do it without a bell. And it all started with a sketch. Now, that same sketch that you see inspired Jerry and me to design a banner for this sanctuary. And we asked my mother to sew it. Now, a committee of 3 seems manageable, you would think, for such a project. But it took over a year of, let's call it trial and error, to end up with the beautiful banner that hangs on the wall right over there now. So why so much effort? Looks pretty simple, right? Well, first of all, we worked on it long distance, as my mother lives in another state. And then to further complicate things, she uses neither computers nor a smartphone. And as an artist, she can become a bit emotional about her creations. I'm being kind. But she does love doing them, and she's always asking us what can she do? And if all that isn't enough to make us think twice about asking, my relationship with my mom has been a work in progress, let's say, since I was 9 years old. So we knew what we were getting into, but off we went. So the first thing we did was send her pictures of the sketch of the bell tower, as well as actual pictures that Jerry painstakingly took from every angle and at different times of day, and I think even a few at different seasons. Now, I mentioned my mom doesn't use computers, so that's not entirely accurate. Her husband, Dick, does email. Only email. And he checks it religiously once every 24 hours. Now that partly explains why it took over a year to get that done. They look normal. But in addition to waiting for emails to go back and forth, Mom would also try to give me descriptions of colors and angles and measurements over the phone. And it drove me crazy. And then I would try to give them to Jerry, and then it would drive him crazy. And early on, when we first were trying to choose fabrics, she would try to verbally describe a color and a texture. and I'd beg her to stop. And after several conversations like, remember Grandma's favorite winter coat? Well, it's just a hair darker in color than that. Or, it's exactly the color of the Gran Torino we had. Remember that car? They stopped making Gran Torinos in '76, by the way. Now, I know that she had a pretty good reason to try to speed up this process. She was anxious to finish sections of the banner while she was feeling healthy. Because you see, shortly after starting it, she became seriously ill. And truthfully, at first, I didn't think much of it because she's always had health issues, ever since I can remember. Nevertheless, she could only sew when she was feeling up to it. But I did finally convince her that Jerry never knew my grandmother and therefore never knew her coat, nor had he ever seen our Gran Torino, which is the car we had when I was quite little. So only actual swatches of fabric in the mail to us were going to help us make good choices. So once we did, we made those choices. My mom emphasized to us that we had to be sure, because once she began cutting, we were committed. We were sure. Did she think we were amateurs? We anxiously waited for the first pictures on email with the pieces cut out and everything laid out on that background, that blue background, for our approval. You know, so they just laid on top, movable. So in the first of many major misunderstandings, she called me and excitedly said that the tower pieces were all sewn on. Sewn on. And I panicked. We expected to see everything before they were permanently attached. So that evening, we received the photo of the not at all right bell tower attached with thread tightly. So Jerry nominated me to tell her it was wrong. So I was the adult, and I broke the news to her that Jerry thought it was wrong. And through tears, she said that she would rip it out. Not a good start. Although I insisted to her that everything else she had done we loved. But she didn't hear that part. She only heard what was wrong, and both of us thought she was being a little bit irrational. Well, now we know, looking back, that she was battling some physical ailments which made everything sound 10 or 20 times worse than they really were. Well, right on schedule, we succeeded in making her cry monthly at least. And there was either an incidence of ripping something out or an accusation of, "You never told me that," at least weekly. Now, I don't want you to worry or feel bad, because if she wasn't doing that project, she would have been doing another project for us, something for our house or something, so it would have been the same thing. And besides, my mom and I would have found some other way to hurt each other's feelings, with or without that banner. We're really good at it. I mean, we don't set out to do that. It just sort of happens. And as we both age, I do try to put in a little extra effort not to do it as much. And I also make an effort to forgive her for some of the things that I've been holding over her head since I've been 9 years old. And when I mess up, I do try to do better the next time. So I have to say it's an imperfect relationship, but it's also beautiful in places. And believe it or not, there's a lot of love there too. Well, it wasn't until just this past week, as I was working on this sermon, that I discovered that I've been practicing a kind of philosophy with my mother, and it's called kintsugi. Kintsugi is actually a Japanese art form that emphasizes repaired cracks in pottery. But it can also be a philosophy. It was accidentally developed in the 15th century by a shogun named Ashikaga Yoshimasa. And after his retirement, he developed a very advanced form of the tea ceremony. And one day, he went into his cupboard and he found that his favorite tea bowl had broken into many, many pieces, and he was upset. So he decided, he was so fond of it, he wanted it repaired, and he sent it to China to get fixed. But when it came back, it had all these unsightly staples in it, which were pieces of steel. Not steel, but, looked like steel. And that's what was holding it back together, and it was ugly. So he decided to give it to his craftsman and said, can you find a better solution to put this back together? Well, they did find a better solution. They decided that they could fill these cracks in his bowl with a metallic substance that made the bowl both beautiful and even more valuable. Well, the shogun loved it, and it became his favorite bowl, and it created a whole new art form in Japan. And the technique celebrates imperfections, because you can see the cracks, but it also highlights the breaks and the flaws with gold. Well, I decided to try it on a homemade chalice. So here is a picture before and after. You're going to see. That's sort of what it looks like. Now, I'm afraid I'm a long way from doing this imperfect art form well, if you get my drift. It was so frustrating. So the pieces wouldn't stay together. I'd think they were together, and then I'd turn my head and I'd look back, and the pieces were back down like that. My fingers got all sticky. I had gold stuff all over my fingers. I had to wipe it down multiple times. At one point, I had walked away from it, and Jerry said, is the gold supposed to be dripping down the sides like that? No. And he kept saying to me, this was your idea. Well, the artwork online, and I suggest you go see online what it's really supposed to look like, but it really does not look anything like this monstrosity. But, what can I say? I'm good at some sorts of art, but not this one. But I learned something. And isn't that what we're all here on earth for? Like Mom, I was after flawlessness. And how ironic is that when this is supposed to be an art form that demonstrates imperfection? As much as I would like to throw this thing away, and boy was I close, I'm not going to. Jerry, I'm afraid it's going in our house, or maybe our office. Then we don't have to see it quite as often. I need it. I need it around because it is going to remind me that I am also broken. I have some responsibility in the relationships that I have that aren't working. It's not all my mother. She might be listening today. She does listen to our sermons sometimes, so I hope she heard that, or she might later. In my mom's case, rather than wallowing in frustration during that whole banner thing, I could have waited. We could have waited. If she worked on that banner when she was healthier, she would have been a lot calmer when we suggested changes. Instead, we forged ahead, adjusting colors and heights and sizes, and I don't know how many times we changed those leaves. But obviously, the banner got finished. In the meantime, Mom needed an emergency procedure, and we discovered she was a severe diabetic for probably over a year, and she was in bad shape. So I'm ashamed. Philosopher Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." So knowing and treating her physical ailments changed a lot of things. The light came in. Her emotions became less intense, and she finally could hear all the positive things we said about that gorgeous banner. Like kintsugi, from chaos, she created that. And now it might sound a little corny, but having nearly lost her, now the cracks in our relationship simply allow more light, more gold to shine through. And it's been a really hard year, but positive in kind of a weird way. And I thought about this, and I think how we relate to each other in this place, this congregation, works a little bit similarly in the kintsugi way. We all love and celebrate each other with our flaws and our frailty. And sometimes we even laugh a little bit about it with each other. We find value and we find light in what we all bring to our circle, to our community. And like my very imperfect chalice, we have to remember that we're doing the best we can. I think we do that well. And I think that that will be especially important as we embark on some new adventures together this year. Because, you know, it's not even been a year since we have been back together in in-person services. And we're still feeling the impact of the pandemic in so many ways. And recently we adjusted how we govern, how we volunteer. And I know that UUCF feels a little different at times. We've got some cracks to fill. But this is an opportunity for us to create something rare and beautiful. So I'd like to invite you to circle round and gather in. And make some mistakes with me and let the golden light shine in.
Song ain't got no melody. I'm gonna sing it to my friends. I know a song ain't got no melody. I'm gonna sing it to my friends. Will it go round in circles? Will it fly high like a bird up in the sky? Will it go round in circles? We'll fly high like a bird up in the sky. I know a story ain't got no moral. Let the bad guy win every once in a while. I know a story ain't got no moral. Let the bad guy win every once in a while. Will it go round in circles? We'll fly high like a bird up in the sky. We'll go round in circles. We'll fly high like a bird up in the sky. I know a dance ain't got no steps. Let the music move me around. I know a dance ain't got no steps. Just gonna let the music move me around. Will it go round in circles? We'll fly high like a bird up in the sky. We'll go round in circles. We'll fly high like a bird up in the sky.
For our visitors, I should mention, that was Dan Garrix, who is our music director here, and he'll be back in person come later in the fall. He's here most of the times, and between Jennifer and Dan, it's like having our own personal Spotify. We ask and get just amazing music here, so thanks to both of them. In 1939, Martha Sharp, a Unitarian Sunday school teacher and mother of 2 young children, was in a taxi cab in faraway Prague, Czechoslovakia. Just a few days earlier, Hitler's goose-stepping troops had invaded the ancient city. Now it was awash with leftists, artists, writers, Jews, and intellectuals who needed help fleeing for their lives. Martha was on her way to help one of them, a man she would refer to as Mr. X for the rest of her life. When she first got into the cab, she saw there was a man riding in the passenger seat. It was immediately clear that he was a Gestapo agent looking for people just like her. This would be the first of Martha's many Mata Hari moments. Nervous though she was, she remembered the spy training she received in England. She gave the driver an address that she figured would be nearly a full block from where Mr. X actually lived. The Nazi agent tried to engage her in conversation to determine her true business. But Martha parried his questions and gave him nothing. When the cab got to the address, Martha got out into the bitter cold, paid the driver quickly, then hurried around the corner and hid in the nearest doorway. She needed to see if he would follow her. He did. The Gestapo agent soon rounded the same corner on foot, and she watched him look up and down the street for her. The impatient cab driver honked his horn, trying to get him to return. Martha's heart skipped a beat, and she flattened herself against the entrance. In the darkness, he walked right past her. The taxi's horn and the intense cold evidently helped the agent decide that she wasn't worth following, and soon they drove away. She slipped from her hiding place and walked to the building where Mr. X lived. She went up 5 flights of dark stairs and rang the bell. A woman answered and said, "No, never heard of him." Martha begged her and told her there was little time, and in desperation produced her passport to prove she was an American. To her dismay, the woman snatched the passport from her hand and slammed the door in her face. Martha's first day, her first foray into clandestine operations, looked at this juncture to be a bust. She was in a city under siege, where an American passport would help you keep out of prison and stay alive. And it apparently had just been stolen. To her immense relief, a man soon opened the door. He denied being Mr. X, but said he could give him a message. Martha explained she just wanted to get Mr. X to the British Embassy, where he would be safe until they could get him out of the country. The man closed the door again, and again Martha was alone in the dark hallway, passportless. In a few terribly long minutes, the man opened the door again, now dressed in an overcoat. He handed Martha her precious passport and said in a whisper, so the neighbors wouldn't hear, "I am Mr. X. Let's go." Now, her next spy trick would be to get him past the Gestapo agents at the embassy gate. Every cab now carried a Nazi minder, so they would have to walk the 30 freezing minutes to the embassy. Our symbol, the flaming chalice, was born in the darkness of World War II, as were the exploits of Martha Sharp and her husband, the Reverend Waitstill Sharp, who served this church in the early 60s. Symbols, as you may know, are not made by humans. Rather, they exist in us, and we discover them when we need them. In simplest terms, the flaming chalice is the light in the window of a distant house on a night when you need some help. You hope you can find some refuge in that circle of light from people who are compassionate and reasonable. That is just one meaning, though. Like any good symbol, ours speaks volumes, and it's actually not at all a warm and fuzzy symbol completely. Our encircled flame promises some chaos, and that the bad guy will win every once in a while. Its vibrating circles speak of the whole universe in motion, and so that naturally includes the darkness in the world and in ourselves too. The flame and its vessel occupy just a part of the whole, and there's space in there for Nazis, old and new. Saints and sinners are both in there. And how far the light reaches to expel the darkness depends on how many of us will carry the light. Many other religions are instead dualistic. They say evil is not actually a part of the world created by their good God. That's unfortunate, even dangerous. If you want even a small chance for a peaceful world, you have to have some sympathy for the devil. After all, the devil, he, she, they, are part of ourselves and our family. Some more than others, of course, but the shadow is everywhere. And finally, the cup, the chalice, the shallow bowl that holds the energy that feeds the flame, it comes in many forms, but it has always had the same message. It's the cornucopia that holds the world's abundance. It's the container you desperately need so you can carry a drink to someone who isn't at the well with you. Most famously, it is the Holy Grail, the cup Jesus drank from, but not just at the Last Supper. The real Jesus always shared food and drink with everyone, especially the imperfect, so-called outcasts. He invited others to have a drink, have a bite of the best stuff the best fuel the world has to offer. Of course, he then added, "Go and do likewise." Our symbol from its beginnings in World War II spoke of serving others. Martha Sharp often wrestled mightily with the question about serving others. How could she leave her own children at home and risk her life working to save other children? she always came to the same conclusion. There were children in Europe who were hungry and in great danger. Her own children were safe, well fed, and well cared for. She had to sacrifice her role as a loving mother and give her energy to care for other children. Arranging safe passage for children became her specialty, and it often involved lying convincingly. Getting Mr. X into the British Embassy in 1939 gave her some more practice in lying. After they neared the embassy, after their long winter walk, a German soldier with icicles on his helmet stopped them. "Identity cards," he demanded in German. "Americans," Martha responded in English, which was, of course, one half of a lie. She pulled out her passport again and said, "American passport, ich spreche kein Deutsch." That was a lie, too. She spoke good German, but she didn't want to get into a conversation. The bluff worked. He let them pass. But now the hard part. The Gestapo man stationed at the embassy gate. Martha's heart thumped. Would she fail with the doorstep to safety within view? An idea, a lie, popped into her head that might work on Hitler's men who were trained to cower under authority. She started complaining angrily and loudly about the lack of taxis and about the cold. We should never have agreed to meet with the secretary. Mr. X just nodded and played along. "Sir," she barked at a Gestapo agent, "is Mr. Swanson still in his office? We're late." She pushed her passport towards the agent. "Please tell Mr. Swanson that Mr. and Mrs. Sharp are here." "I'm not the British embassy guard," he complained testily in broken English. "He's over there. Go ask him." He didn't even look at her passport. Soon they were inside, warming up with a cup of tea, and the Unitarian Sunday school teacher bade farewell to a very grateful Mr. X. Waitstill and Martha fled Prague in late 1939 and later discovered the Gestapo had been just days away from picking them up. They shortly continued their rescue efforts in Portugal, Spain, and Vichy, France, with the newly formed USC, Unitarian Service Committee. It soon became apparent that the organization needed a symbol to put on the documents they created for refugees. The head of the USC in Lisbon, Portugal, Charles Joy, even laughed about the documents they produced. They were churning out important, true identification papers, but they looked fake, unofficial. Joy knew they needed a symbol that would carry some weight, make it clear that they were being careful to serve the good, the light. He asked a refugee and artist, Hans Deutsch, to create one. In just a few days, Hans had it. And of course, he didn't create it, he discovered it. And it was the prime symbol of serving others. It was a shallow bowl or cup with a stem and a tall flame, a symbol of light conquering darkness since ancient times. It stuck, as only true symbols do. Waitstill and Martha Sharp returned home in 1941 and helped build the Unitarian Service Committee by giving hundreds of speeches about their adventures. They were frequently away from their children, and then there were more trips to Europe after the war ended to help repair a war-torn continent. The strain was too much for their marriage, which soon ended. Their little girl would occasionally tell Martha, "You're not my mommy. Aunt Edna is my mommy. She took care of me." Their boy was often angry, mean-spirited, sometimes even violent. The Sharps had indeed sacrificed a great deal to bring some light into the darkness of World War II. Eventually, when their children became adults, they learned about what their parents did in Europe, and then they understood their mother and father followed a moral compass that they could not ignore. They realized their parents were, as their daughter said, wise with the gift of courage. And now, to be true to our symbol that encompasses all things, perfect and imperfect, I should mention that Waitstill Sharp may have been better at defying the Nazis than he was at being a minister. He served here from 1963 to 67 and is remembered as being rather autocratic. And a not so small group of congregants even asked him to leave. So much for perfect heroes. And even if they exist, they would probably be too awesome to inspire us to action. So let us celebrate all of us imperfect people who gather in this circle of light and then carry it into the darkness.
May we all be a refuge for others around us. Will you be my refuge, my haven in the storm? Will you keep the embers warm when my fire's all but gone? Will you remember and bring me sprigs of rosemary? Be my sanctuary till I can carry on, carry on, carry on. This one knocked me to the ground. This one dropped me to my knees. I should have seen it coming, but it surprised me. Will you be my refuge, my haven in the storm? Will you keep the embers warm when my fire's all but gone? Will you remember and bring me sprigs of rosemary? Be my sanctuary till I can carry on, carry on, carry on. In a state of true believers on streets called us and them, it's gonna take some time till the world feels safe again. Will you be my refuge, my haven in the storm? Will you keep the embers warm when my fire's all but gone? Will you remember and bring me sprigs of rosemary? Be my sanctuary till I can carry on, carry on, carry on. You can rest here in the chapel or in a circle of friends, a quiet grove of trees or between two bookends. Will you be my refuge, my haven in the storm? Will you keep the embers warm when my fire's all but gone? Will you remember and bring me sprigs of rosemary? Be my sanctuary till I can carry on, carry on, carry on, carry on.
Thank you, Bonnie. That was beautiful. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, most of you have probably forgotten all about this because we were supposed to do it in June and we didn't. And COVID had something to do with it. It's the Volunteer of the Year Award. We didn't do it in June because the person was out of the country, came back with COVID. Then the ministers were on vacation all the summer, and we didn't want to do it without them. So we finally decided that ingathering is a special service, so this would be a special time to present the Volunteer of the Year Award. This person is on the Finance Committee. This person has headed up our canvas for the last 2 years, helps with the Saturday church cleanups, was the brainchild and created and coordinated a very successful Tales and Tunes event. Sandra Murphy, would you please come forward? We have a card for you, and there is a gift certificate to the Whiting inside, which might be, and the plaque now has Sandra's name on it.
Oh yeah, there I am.
Yeah, there you are. And John Helsum will be so nice to hang this up downstairs for us.
Great, thank you.
Do you want to say anything, or just?
Well, of course, there's always that opportunity. I just want to say thank you because clearly we all have the opportunity to do wonderful things here, and you all have been wonderful. You've been great fun for me to work with. You've been forgiving because as we heard today in our service, the cracks are here for all of us, but it's been my great joy, and I've learned, gosh, why do I get so emotional about these things?
Okay.
Anyway, it's been fun, and I'm looking forward to doing more. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. She is also now on the endowment committee too. This is our time of generosity. Unitarian Universalism is a grand vision of a world filled with peace, justice, love, and joy. That vision is embodied in a few large congregations, numerous mid-sized congregations, and many, many small congregations like ours. No matter its size, every congregation depends on each of its members to commit their time, energy, and resources to help make that grand vision real. Please share your resources by placing your offering in the basket at the back of the sanctuary as you leave, or you can use the QR code on your order of service, or you can make a gift online at uuflint.org. And today, let's pledge our time and energy to a project or two at the Helping Hands Fair downstairs during coffee hour. Individually and together, we can build a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. Thank you for all the ways you give until it feels good.
This path will ask much of us. Let us move forward with love and appreciation for one another. Let us move forward knowing whoever you are and whatever your gifts, you are never alone on this journey.
And let us extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.